Exploring Fakenham, past and present. A journey from the east end of Norwich Street to Cattle Market Street via Whitehorse Street. We begin our journey today from the town sign which stands at the busy five-way junction at the east end of Norwich Street. The town sign was erected at Leach's Corner in 1978, on the site once occupied by two small shops, Alec Leach's Greengrocers, and Len Bryer's Shoe Repairs and Fishing Tackle Shop. Both were demolished in the early 1970s to ease the flow of traffic at this once extremely narrow junction. Before we set off, let's take a minute to explore the significance of our town's decorative sign, which features 7 handcrafted panels that together symbolizes Fakenham's historic past. First, the coat of arms, which illustrates Fakenham's connection with John of Gaunt, progenitor of the Plantagenet House of Lancaster, with its 3 lions and 3 fleur-de-lis. The printer depicted on the sign represents the importance of the printing industries which once thrived in the town. The ship represents the life of Sir Robert Seppings, born in Holt Road in 1767, and who became a master shipwright at Chatham Dockyard. By 1816 he had become Surveyor of the Navy, and was knighted at sea, aboard the royal yacht. The penny-farthing represents John Cousins Garrood, who was born in Fakenham in 1851. In the 1870s he began his cycle manufacturing business in Wells Road, introducing the strong but lightweight tubular cycle forks and grips for pedals, and was also an early user of ball bearings. He was also a member of the Cyclists Touring Club, now known as Cycling UK. The club used to place a large seal of approval on places which gave cyclists good accommodation. The plough represents the life of Sir George Edwards, born in Marsham in 1850. George started work at the age of 6, scaring crows for a shilling a week. As a young man he became a primitive Methodist preacher. While residing in Fakenham he began a life devoted to the labour movement and politics, creating his own agricultural union. Active as a politician at county council level, he was elected to Parliament as an MP aged 70. A memorial to Sir George Edwards MP marks his resting place in Queen's Road Cemetery. The Quaker with a Bible represents the Peckover family. Edmund Peckover was honourably discharged from Cromwell's army and set up as a merchant in 1657. The family name remained prominent in the town until Joseph Peckover died in 1836. The Peckovers lived at the Manor House in Tun Street, later moving to the marketplace where they owned the buildings on the south and east sides of the market square. The Quaker burial ground, often referred to as the Peckover Cemetery, can be found in Oxborough Lane. Joseph is almost certainly the last to be buried here, having been the last Quaker in Fakenham. Finally, the Oxwagon, which represents the missionary life of Reverend Henry Buckingham, born in Holt Road in 1844. Henry became a primitive Methodist and later a missionary on the Orange River in South Africa. After 5 years there, he and his wife trekked by Oxwagon some 2,000 miles to the Zambezi where they set up a successful mission. He is buried there on the banks of the river. His wife returned to Fakenham and laid the foundation stone of the new Methodist chapel in Oak Street, dedicated to his name. The Buckingham Memorial Chapel opened on the 9th of September 1908. After serving the community as a place of worship for more than 100 years, it has since been converted to accommodate 3 residential apartments. Crossing now toward Whitehorse Street, we immediately come across the Grade 2 listed building currently occupied by the Fakenham Conservative Club. This building has experienced a somewhat varied form of use. Originally it was a chapel built by the Independents, later used by the Wesleyans, and then for a period it became a school, at a time when the British School in Norwich Road was being repaired. Later it became home to the Lancaster Press Printing Works, founded by Alfred Applegate in 1922. Today Whitehorse Street is a busy carriageway flanked by car parks, though until the 1980s the narrow main north-south road from Whitehorse Street, via Cattle Market Street to Bridge Street, ran right through the heart of the Wharfdale Printing Works. A large part of the works was destroyed by fire in 1914, which led to modernization by the new owners, Wyman, Son and Company. Throughout the 1920s, the works was developed further. More staff were taken on and houses built for them. The company eventually had over 100 houses in the town. The patch of undeveloped land at the corner of Whitehorse Street and Norwich Street marks the site of the former Wyman and Sons print office building which came into use in 1931. Some shops and houses that stood here previously, including that of Mr. Edward Watson, were sacrificed in order to build them. Though not yet established, some believe this iconic building may have been designed by Norwich architect George Skipper. Those who remember the printing works will recall the very narrow street where the clickety-clack sound of busy printing presses filled the street, and where forklift trucks and delivery vehicles shared the highway with regular road traffic. This aerofilm photo, taken in 1928, clearly shows Whitehorse Street and the extensive area already occupied by Wyman, Son and Company. We can see that the new print offices on Norwich Street had yet to be built, and the many cottages which once populated the east side of the street. These cottages were progressively demolished as the printing works expanded still further. Today, of course, Whitehorse Street extends south to join Olivet Way at the mini roundabout. Before continuing, let's first enjoy a few pictures that show how this area looked before the road improvements were made and the inner relief road constructed. Continuing down Whitehorse Street, beyond the second pedestrian crossing, we arrive at the point where Cattle Market Street, Whitehorse Street and Oxborough Lane converged. Continuing into Cattle Market Street, we find the auction rooms of James Beck. This building replaced the old 1930s built structure which stood on the former cattle market that occupied the car park area opposite. The tiny little octagonal tariff house is one of the few remaining relics of the former cattle market that opened here in 1857. Fakenham Cattle Market closed in the mid-1960s, though in its heyday, was one of the most important in Norfolk. On Thursdays, it wasn't unusual to see 60 or 70 livestock wagons at Hempton Station being loaded with cattle, pigs, and sheep. There was also a large turnover in corn and seeds, and a subsidiary market for fowls, ducks, rabbits, and eggs. The iron stock pens, a few of which survive today, were made by local iron founder Clare Bowles. Although livestock sales had ceased, the long tradition of regular sales and auctions continued for some years at the old Corn Hall. This timber and asbestos building was erected to serve as an alternative to the original Corn Exchange, which had been converted into a cinema. In addition to sales and auctions, other social events were held here: parties, plays, and even boxing and wrestling matches. Following the removal of the cattle pens, the entire area became a car park, used weekly on Thursdays as a flea market, which remains popular today. Continuing now toward Bridge Street, we pass the General Townshend Club, opened after the First World War for the welfare and benefit of those who fought in the conflict. The building, originally an independent chapel, was built in 1819, giving the street its original name of Chapel Street. Our pictorial journey concludes as we emerge opposite the Limes in Bridge Street, formerly a spacious residential house that over the years has been home to many well-known local businessmen. In 1976 the Limes was converted into a hotel, then in 2007 it became the Garden House Restaurant, and more recently, Wetherspoons. As our program concludes, we turn to enjoy further glimpses of Fakenham past. Thank you for watching.